Guys, what is going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. So guys, we've got Errol Spence giving an interview. I'm going to do bit part videos about what Errol Spence had to say. Errol Spence says once he collects the WBA belt, which I assume he's saying about the Pacquiao fight, he wants an undisputed fight with Terence Bud Crawford. And it's great to hear. It's great to hear. But I am worried about how that fight's going to be made. I am skeptical. I'm not sure that fight is going to happen. Listen, I really want to see that fight. And by the way, I really want to see Manny Pacquiao v. Errol Spence. And I'm not overlooking. But if, Errol is a favorite, and he may not get past Pacquiao. And I do think if Pacquiao beats Spence, I do think there's a greater chance we see Pacquiao-Crawford. However, moving away from the Pacquiao-Crawford situation, and I'm going to do a video on that because Errol Spence made some good points about that situation as well. But I don't see Spence Crawford happening. I don't know what you guys think, because if Spence beats Pacquiao, right, Spence is going to think he's the big dog like he always been saying, and there's no way. I think Terence Crawford. If I've said in another video that if Spence beats Manny Pacquiao, then I think he's making a very strong case for himself. I think he's making a very strong case for himself to get the lion's share of the split, because Terence Crawford's resume is not that great. Terence Crawford has not, he's not a pay-per-view attraction. He's not a guy that a lot of people are interested in comparison to Errol Spence. And I think Errol Spence is putting himself in a position where, from a marketable commercial point of view, Errol Spence is on another level now to Terence Bud Crawford. And this Pacquiao fight is only going to help him. If he wins, of course. It's only going to take him to another level. And I'm not sure Terence Crawford will have a leg to stand on. And I would be with Spence if Spence wants a bigger split. If Spence beats Pacquiao, I don't think anyone can kind of then say, well, it's a 50-50 fight. And like I said, I've been a guy that on my channel has been saying that it's a 50-50 fight. There's no other reason, Spence don't want this fight. But actually now when you look at it, Spence has fought Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia, Sean Porter. He's fought Lamont Peterson. He's fought Chris Algieri, Kell Brook. Now he's getting in there with Manny Pacquiao. I just don't see how Terence Crawford, when you look at what the resume that Spence has got, and then the fact that he's going to have 3 belts as well. And the fact that, from a pay-per-view standpoint, Errol Spence has sold a lot more pay-per-views. Errol Spence is now doing big numbers. And by the way, I've always been on Crawford's side here when it comes to, the split and stuff. But it's hard to now look at all of that and then say, well, look. Crawford's highest pay-per-view numbers was against Khan. 150,000 pay-per-view numbers, buys. Right? People think that bombed. How much of those pay-per-view numbers was all down to Crawford? Or was that because Khan was also a big name? Although Khan was past his best, but how come if Crawford could do 150 to 200,000 pay-per-views plus in every fight, how come his other fights haven't been on pay-per-view? And a lot of his fans attacked me at the time when I said I think Khan was the reason why the numbers did what they did. And it wasn't because of Crawford. But the reason why I was saying that is because Crawford put Postal and the fight did 70,000. Right? So for me, the reason why those numbers did what they did, because the fight was promoted well. And Khan was also a very, very big name, especially because of his early part of his career in America. And just generally, Khan is a bigger name than Crawford worldwide. People know who Amir Khan is. Just look at their social media numbers. Khan has a much bigger following than someone like Terence Crawford. And I personally think he's probably made more money in his career. He's a bigger attraction. That doesn't mean he's a better fighter. Of course not. Terence Crawford is pound for pound an elite fighter. What I'm trying to point out is I think those numbers did what they did. The 150,000 did what they did. If Crawford fought Mean Machine on pay-per-view, I think those numbers, I don't even think it does 30, 40,000 pay-per-view buys. So this is what I'm trying to say, that I think they tried to use Khan's name at that time, but he was so past his best. And I think the pay-per-view numbers may have done even more if Khan was in his prime. Unfortunately, Khan was past his prime, and I think people kind of felt that before the fight. And that's why I think the pay-per-view weren't as big as what they were. However, moving away from that, that's his biggest pay-per-view numbers against Khan, 150,000 pay-per-view buys. that compared to what Errol Spence has done. Errol Spence has done bigger numbers. You know, Errol Spence now against Pacquiao, this may do 5, 6, 700,000 pay-per-view buys. I think it's bigger than Wilder Fury 3. People have seen Wilder Fury 3. We haven't seen Spence Pacquiao. So for me, this is going to be a bigger fight. This is going to take... If Errol was to win this fight, this is taking Errol Spence to another level from a commercial standpoint. And I'm not sure Terence Crawford would be able to compete with him from a commercial standpoint after that. And then when you look at his resume, when you look at how many belts he holds, when you look at what Errol Spence has done in terms of resume, yeah, he may not be a 3-weight world champion, but his resume is starting to look thick, and he's also starting to put himself as one of the best resumes in boxing. And I believe he will push for a Terence Crawford fight. But I don't believe he's going to undersell himself in that fight. I don't believe, from what I've heard from Errol Spence isn't just going to give Crawford 50-50 just because that's what Crawford wants. Unfortunately, Crawford's going to have to take the smaller side of the split. And I actually think Errol Spence has a legitimate reasoning behind that. I actually think now, if he beats Pacquiao, unfortunately for Crawford, I think he's going to have to take the smaller side of the split. And I don't think Terence Crawford can argue with that if he really wants to fight. I think 60-40 in Errol Spence's favor makes sense. Listen, if Terence Crawford is confident in his ability and confident he beats Spence, why not take that? You know, taking a 60-40 split will make him more money than he's ever made before. And I don't know whether the money that Spence will make against Crawford will be anywhere near as much as the Pacquiao fight. Maybe. But you'd have to say that Errol Spence now, from a purse's point of view, from a commercial standpoint, from a resume standpoint, he has surpassed Terence Crawford. And I just don't think that Crawford really has a leg to stand on. I think he's got a promoter who's saying basically Terence Crawford doesn't sell. And maybe Bob Arum knows that Terence Crawford's going to leave him, so that's why he's saying the things that he's saying. But at the end of the day, the truth is the truth. I think Bob Arum is basically saying what the truth is. And listen, it's a promoter's job to sell a fighter. But the problem is, as a fighter, it's also your job to make yourself an attraction. Everyone blames Bob Arum, but look at Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is the talk of the town. Why? Because he's made himself an attraction. Terence Crawford, unfortunately, even though I think he's a great fighter, and I think from a skills point of view, he's better than Tyson Fury. I believe he's probably skilled-wise one of the best in the world. Unfortunately, he hasn't made himself an attraction. And Spence, he's fighting the tougher fights, and I actually think he's making himself more of an attraction now. You know, it's sad because you want to see a talent like Crawford get the big fights, but for whatever reason, he can't seem to. And I think he's got a little frustrated. I hope the undisputed fight can happen, because I think it would be a great fight if Spence was to win and Crawford. I think it's a great matchup. I think it's two guys in their prime, and Crawford's got to get a move on. He's 33 years of age. He's not getting any younger. He's getting older by the day, and I feel like his prime may pass by without him getting in the ring with anyone. And then you don't want to get into a Golovkin situation where you kind of get guys where you're kind of on the slide, where your peak years are kind of passing you by. Golovkin was a bit like that. Golovkin's peak years were kind of passing him by, unfortunately. And when Golovkin did manage to get Canelo, I actually think Golovkin was, although the first fight I think he was good, I think when he got the second fight and then after that, I think he went past his prime a little. Because he was getting old, and he had a lot of amateur fights, a lot of, wear and tear on the body. And unfortunately for Crawford, hopefully he might suffer the same fate, and then he may fight somebody, and he might not be the Terence Crawford that, was when he was younger or when he was like 30. And that would be a damn shame, because there's no doubt in my mind, I believe Terence Crawford is an elite fighter, an unbelievable fighter, but he's not getting the big fights. His career's kind of stagnating. He's a bit inactive. They're talking about a fight with Josh Taylor, but if he was to beat Josh Taylor, he's not going to get any credit for that. A lot of people already on my channel have said that the Taylor fight is just Crawford cherry picking again. It's Crawford fighting a smaller guy that's not really done anything at welterweight, and it's an easy fight for him. And that's what he's going to wait. He's basically saying he's wasting his time fighting Kell Brook, Amir Khan, who passed their best, and he's going to be looking to pick a Taylor fight, who's a 140 pounder. I personally think he's going to see it out. I don't think you're going to see Crawford fight again until maybe his contract runs out with Bob Arum, and then possibly maybe he might become a free agent like Canelo. Unfortunately, that free agent stuff may not work for Crawford because Crawford is not as big a star as Canelo. However, I'm pretty sure the PBC would want to work with Crawford because there are fights that can be made, and surely PBC would want to make the fight with Spence and Crawford. Surely. Al Heyman may want to tie Crawford to a deal. I don't know how it worked, but he may want to tie Crawford to a long-term deal in order to get that fight. I don't know, because if Crawford's a free agent, then Crawford could beat Spence and then he could go wherever he wants to go. He's the undisputed champion, so maybe Al Heyman might want to tie him down. I don't know what will happen, but let's see. Hopefully, when he is freed up, that fight with him and Spence can be easily made. Crawford could, like I said, become a free agent, and Hearn thinks that if you're not as big a star, that's probably not the best thing for you. But I think Crawford, although he's not a bigger star as Canelo, he is a pound for pound great fighter. So surely everybody would want to work with him and get them on their platform. And I actually think someone like Eddie Hearn could make Crawford a star. I think it's going to be difficult because, like I said, I think he's going to have to get him those big fights, and those big fights are across with PBC. Like, Crawford's a welterweight. And even all the big fights are with PBC, and even the 154 pounders are with PBC. Right? So Crawford, he's gonna have to fight. PBC fighters. So I personally think it makes sense for Crawford to go off the PBC and sign with them, because they've got all the fighters that he wants to fight. Really, when you think about it, I think the only guy that probably would have fought Crawford and be willing to fight Crawford was probably Porter. But I think Bob Arum has got to the point where he's so frustrated in terms of the money that Crawford's generating, or the fights are generating. He doesn't want to pay someone like Porter huge money because he doesn't think the pay-per-view or the numbers are going to do anything, and he feels that he's just going to be losing money on Crawford. So I personally think he doesn't want to waste huge money like he did on Khan and Brook, because he's probably thinking the money. I actually think after the Khan fight, I think he realized, I actually think Bob Arum probably thought, this guy's not going to make me any money. That's what I think anyway. I think the Khan fight was the last, that's where he was willing to pay someone huge money. And I think the way that fight played out as well, I just think Bob Arum thought, okay, I've got to be really careful on how much I pay the guys that he's fighting. And that's why then he started pushing to make the Pacquiao and the Spence fight, because I think he realized that these type of fights aren't going to generate him huge money. He needs the big fight. And unfortunately, he couldn't get that. Then after he fought Amir Khan, he fought Mean Machine, then he fought Kell Brook. And again, those weren't even on pay-per-view. And I'm pretty sure Mean Machine didn't get anywhere near what Khan did. And we know Kell Brook got about $2 million, which, Kell Brook was willing to take at that time, because where was he going to get that kind of money from any other fight, apart from if he obviously fights Amir Khan, which it looks like it's a possibility now for Kell Brook. So Kell Brook might get that fight. But it's just a sad situation. It's a sad situation for Terence Crawford, because Crawford's a great fighter, and I've always liked Crawford. I think people on my channel love to hate on Crawford. Listen, I think Crawford's an exceptional talent. I just think that, unfortunately, you can't get those big fights. And I do think that maybe, I do think that with this Spence situation, hopefully Spence looks to make the fight. But again, I don't think Spence is going to undervalue himself. And what I mean by that is, I think Spence will have a legitimate argument for a 60-40 split in that fight, and maybe even a 70-30 split now, because of what he's done, because of all the guys that he's beaten, because of the pay-per-view numbers that he's doing, because of the purses that he's making. I think he'll have an argument for the lion's share, and I don't think Crawford would. I'm not sure Crawford will be able to have a leg to stand on in front of the fans in terms of, listen, there may be some people say 50-50 Errol's ducking. There will be, because there's certain people that like Terence Crawford. But as you guys know, I'm not really biased. I'm just being honest, and I'm always been neutral. And the way me looking at it now as a neutral boxing fan, it was a bit like Joshua Wilder. I feel like Joshua was a bigger commercial commodity than Wilder, and I think he deserved a bigger split. So that's just my opinion on it. I know some of you are going to disagree. Some Crawford fans are going to come on here and disagree. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. If you disagree with me, leave your thoughts in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to get back to you. Leave your thoughts, guys. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.